महदी कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी। सूरज को सारे रास्ते बताता है खुद इमाम, मशरिक है ये यहाँ से निकलना है तेरा काम। थक जाए गर सफ़र में तो फिर भी है एक मकाम, मगरिब है मेरे कदमों में करना यही क़याम। कह दे जहाँ से वास निकलता है आफताब, कह दे जहाँ से वास निकलता है आफताब। महदी से पूछ पूछ के चलता है आफताब। कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी। वो है तो कायनात है, वो है तो ज़िंदगी, वो है तो ये नमाज है, वो है तो बंदगी। वो है तो आ रही है सदा या हुसैन की, वो है तो हो रहा है जहाँ में अली अली। अब जो खिलाफ ज़िक्र अली लब हिलाएगा, अब जो खिलाफ ज़िक्र अली लब हिलाएगा, दुनिया से बेहिसाब जहन्नुम में जाएगा। कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी। यूँ आस है, यूँ आस है ज़हूर की दिल के दयार में, अकबर जो मौत आ भी गई इंतज़ार में, फिर भी तड़प रहेगी दिले बेकरार में। हम मुंतज़िर रहेंगे हमेशा मज़ार में, देगा सदाए जब भी हमें वक्त का हुसैन, देगा सदाए जब भी हमें वक्त का हुसैन। कब्रों से हम पुकारेंगे लब्बैक या हुसैन। कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी, कहो या महदी। बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु।
Thank you, Brother Ali Noma, for that beautiful recitation. Now, I'd like to thank Brother Nouri Sardar for making it here today, despite his busy schedule. We're going to now follow along and go towards and play our podcast. If you guys remember last year, we played a podcast about the Imam and his loneliness and his virtues despite not being here, and despite us not being able to see him. And if you haven't watched that podcast, you guys can find it on our YouTube channel at Mehdiya USA. But this year, we're going to be focusing on a different topic. Today, we're going to be focusing on how do I love my Imam? How do I show my love for the Imam? And how does love tie into religion in general? How does love tie into my religion? So we're gonna put on the podcast, and at certain intervals, we're gonna pause and ask you guys some questions. So be prepared for that. So with a loud salawat, we're gonna begin the podcast. Allah.
وصلى الله عليك يا ولي العصر دركنا ولا تهلكنا. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mahdiya podcast, dedicated to the service of the master of the era, Sahib al-Asr wa zaman, Ajjallahu ta'ala farjahu sharif. And we would like to congratulate all the mu'mineen on the wiladat of Imam Mahdi, Ajjallahu ta'ala farjahu sharif. And with me is Brother Ali. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Ali. How are you doing today?
Walaikum assalam, Brother Hassan. Thank you for having me here again. And alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. I always love doing these podcasts with you.
Alhamdulillah. 15th of Shaban is always a great opportunity to discuss the matters of the Ahlul Bayt and to spread the message of love and peace. You know, Brother Ali, we always have a great discussion every year. So this year I have a question that I wanted to ask you.
Wow, that's kind of surprising because this year you're going to ask me a question. Usually I'm the one asking you all the questions. So please go ahead.
Well, don't worry. This question doesn't have a right or wrong answer, but it's just something to think about. I feel it's important to ask questions and think about our beliefs as much as it is to act upon them.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, so what's your question?
What role does love have in the religion, and how does that relate to Imam Zaman Radiyallahu ta'ala farjahu sharif?
I believe that love is something that is deeply rooted within the religion of Islam. I mean, if you think about it, if you really love someone, you would want them to succeed in every aspect of their life. And the prophets were sent by Allah to help us succeed in this life and the next. So I can humbly say that the love that Allah has for His creation is very apparent to me. And I do know that having love for Imam Zaman, Ajjallahu ta'ala farjahu sharif, can be on different levels based on the capacity and understanding of each person. I can say with my heart that I love Imam Zaman, but I feel like there are deeper levels of love that can be reached. But I want to know what perspectives you have to explain on this topic.
If I was to explain this in parts, I would first start off by noting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen to accomplish His affairs through love, as it is something that's evident in the system that He has created. And second, also following the religion of Allah is similarly also accomplished through love. And number three, the most important aspect of religion, which is to obey His divine emissaries, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, is also based on this same principle of love. And number four, the connection of all these understandings of love and connecting it to the master of the era, where we would assess ourselves in our level of love for the Imam Ajjallahu ta'ala farjahu sharif. So to start off with the first point over here, if we look at one example of the system that Allah has created, we will see that in the human cycle, from the birth of a child to the adulthood, at each and every step, the growth and upbringing is developed through the love of the parents. Even though the parents will go through a series of hardships in raising a child, they will still be willing to sacrifice everything they have for their child. And this is due to the love that Allah has planted in their hearts. Love is such an elixir that turns the hardships into joy and the pain into relief.
I like this example you've given. If I think about it, there is a lot of pain that the mother of a child has to go through at each stage. From the 9 months in the womb and all the way to raising the child. And even though there are a lot of hardships involved, the mother would willingly sacrifice her sleep and her own peace to make sure her child is safe and well. And this is due to the love that Allah has naturally placed within her heart and soul.
Exactly. And this is just one example that we can notice in our lives. If we were to take the love of the mother out of the equation, then it would be impossible for her to deal with all these hardships. But it is through this divine gift of love that she is able to go through these situations. It is the grace, the fadl of Allah, that He chose love as the means to accomplish His affairs.
So I see this example of love naturally within Allah's system of existence, of how He has used love as a vehicle to accomplish an affair.
Okay, so I hope you guys were able to hear all that, but here is question number 1. Why was the example of love of a mother discussed in part 1? A, it's an example of how in Allah's system love is used as a vehicle to accomplish His affairs. B, it was discussed to make us understand the love of a mother towards her child. C, it was discussed to make us understand the love of Imam Mahdi's mother towards him. Or D, it was discussed as the youth of these days are not respecting their mothers as much as they should. Any takers? Imran? A. It's an example of how in Allah's system, love is used as a vehicle to accomplish affairs. Final answer? Yeah, that's correct. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
There? But what about within the intricacies of the religion? Where can we point out the teachings of love within the religion of Islam?
I'm glad you asked. To put it into perspective, I want to bring a hadith from Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, where he says, "Hal ad-din illa al-hub?" Is religion anything but love? Then he mentions verse 7 of Surah Hujurat, حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانَ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ, that Allah has endeared the faith to you and has beautified it in your hearts. This statement of the Imam alayhi salam, it points to the fact that love is something that is encompassed throughout the religion of Islam, and that Allah has placed the love of the faith in our hearts and made it something that is pleasing to us.
I can understand from this that love is a divine gift from Allah and that it has deep roots within the foundations of the religion.
That's right. And to add to this point, the prophets have been commanded to execute the affairs of his religion through love itself. Allah had revealed to Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, saying, "Ahbibni wa habbibni ila khalqi," love me and make me beloved amongst my creatures. So we can see that love is part of the divine commands of Allah.
Okay, question number 2. Allah's command to Prophet Dawood alayhi salam is to love me and make me beloved amongst my creatures was primarily because A. The nation of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam did not love Allah. B. The majority of the people do not love Allah. C. If people love Allah, then Allah will love them back. Or D. The Prophet alayhi salam have been commanded to execute the affairs of religion through love. Yes. D. That is correct. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That's interesting. You know, this reminds me of a verse within the Holy Quran where Allah commands the Muslims to have love for the close relatives of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his progeny. It says, "Say, I do not ask of you any reward for it but love for my near relatives."
Alhamdulillah. This verse brings us to our third point, which is the most important aspect of religion, which is to obey his divine emissaries, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalatu wassalam, is also based on the same principle of love. If we were to follow through on this divine command of loving and obeying the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam, we would realize that this would be the cause of our success in this world and the hereafter. Just like how you mentioned that if you truly love someone, you would want them to succeed. In the same manner, Allah places love in our hearts and commands us to have love for his divine emissaries. And it is through this love that we find success in this world and the hereafter. So to put it into perspective even further, we should keep in mind verse 31 of Surah Al Imran, which says, "In kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'uni yuhbibkum Allah wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum." That if you love Allah, then follow me. Allah will love you and forgive your sins. And to explain another level of this, one of the commands of the Holy Messenger of Allah is to have love for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalatu wassalam. And the result of this love is that paradise is guaranteed, as he has mentioned, فَهَؤُلَاءِ مَصَابِيحُ الدُّجَى وَأَئِمَّةُ الْهُدَى وَعَلَامُ التُّقَى, that they, the Imams, are the lamps in darkness, the Imams of guidance, and the signs of piety. وَمَنْ أَحَبَّهُمْ وَتَوَلَّاهُمْ, and whoever loves them and accepts their mastership, كُنْتُ ضَامِنًا لَهُ الْفَوْزَ بِالْجَنَّةِ, then I assure paradise for him near Allah.
This really all connects over here. I can see how love is truly one of the divine favors of Allah and how it's encompassed throughout the religion. I feel like it's important for us to understand the depths of the divine favor of Allah, to truly appreciate it and build our love towards the Imam of the time, with these understandings in our hearts and minds.
Okay, we're at question number 3 now. Obeying the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam is also on the same principle of love, but has the following additional benefit. A, Allah assures paradise to the one who loves them. B, it allows a mu'min to earn extra sawab, so like extra credit. C, most people don't understand how to love the Ahlul Bayt, and understanding it will help your religion. Or D, parents will love the child more if they love the Ahlul Bayt. I'm gonna go with you. A, Allah assures paradise to the one who loves them. That is correct. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
But I wanted to ask you how I can assess the level of my love for the Imam of the time.
There are many ways I would say that we can assess our level of love for the Imam of the time. Think about it like this. If we were to lose someone we love, or if someone we love has gone on a long journey, we would keep things that would remind us of them as a souvenir, as a symbol of our love for them, right? And we would make preparations for their return and wait for the day they return, so that we will be able to embrace them wholeheartedly. Now, one assessment we can do is think about our Imam in this regard. Have we kept any souvenirs of his which are in the form of his tawqi, the letters of the Imam, and the teachings and sayings of the Imam of the time? Or have we forgotten about these hidden treasures that he has left for us? Do we really make preparations for his return and try to develop ourselves in a way where we would be ready for his return and ready to support and help him? Also, as the days go by, how often do we think about him and sincerely pray for him?
Honestly, these points are very eye-opening for me. I do need to look into the letters written by the Imam and try to prepare myself to be ready for his reappearance. I know that if I sincerely open my heart with the divine love towards the Imam, that I will be able to reach deeper levels of love towards him. I just hope that the hearts of the Mu'mineen are able to reach the depths of love that would connect them to the Imam of the time.
Inshallah. This is a step towards developing the connection with the master of the era, Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, Ajtf ta'ala al-Sharif. And the sincere mu'mineen will prepare for his return to the best of their abilities, even though tears may be shed due to the separation. As Imam Sadiq alayhi salam explains one of the conditions of the mu'mineen during this time of ghaybat of the Imam, he says, Ama wallahi la yaghaybanna imamukum sinina min dahrikum وَلَتَدْمُعَنَّ عَلَيْهِ عُيُونَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That pay attention by Allah. Certainly your Imam will be in occultation for some years in your time. The eyes of the believer will surely cry for him. I pray that the love for the Imam Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajul Sharif blesses these tears that are shed from the eyes of those who search for him restlessly.
Ilahi Ameen. I do hope that the restless eyes of the Mu'mineen find relief at the sight of the Imam. You know, I feel that with the current conditions of the world, we are in need of divine presence of the Imam more than ever. It just seems to me sometimes that we often forget about his existence.
Okay, last but not least, this one's for the ladies' side, for the sisters. Question number 4. The eyes of the believer will surely cry for him, as in Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. This is a hadith from which Imam? A, Imam Baqir. B, Imam Kazim. C, Imam Sadiq. Or D, Imam Ali.
C.
Imam Sadiq? That is correct. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
That's 4 for 4.
What can I do to make the vision of my master known to the world?
That's a great question. You know, if the people of the world knew about the vision of peace and harmony that will be realized at the hands of the Imam, they would definitely support him wholeheartedly. So we should try to make his existence known to the world and align with his vision by reigniting that spark of hope within our hearts and the hearts of the people of the world. You know, we spend so much time talking about people like athletes and other notable figures. I feel like we should spend even more time making the master of the era known to the world as well.
I agree. If we truly love the Imam, we would spend time within our own circles discussing his affairs, and I believe that will serve as a catalyst to our preparation for the Zuhur.
Inshallah, the Zuhur of Imam Zaman Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajul Sharif is hastened, and may Allah, by the rights of his beloved Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wa Alaihi, placed the love of his last luminary in the hearts of all mu'mineen.
So I hope y'all learned a lot from this podcast. Thank you a lot, Brother Farhan and Brother Hassan and Brother Ali Rizvi. They worked a lot on this podcast. And now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Brother Nouri Sardar for some beautiful English recitation. So with the loud salawat.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. Before I begin, if I can ask all the brothers just to come to the middle, inshallah, so we can participate, inshallah, together. Muhammad وآل محمد صلوات. Second louder salawat, please. And a third with the loudest of your voices. Nara Haydari, Haydari, Haydari. I'm no date seller, but I aspire to be. In the love of Ali, I yearn to be who? Maytham. Maytham, as we know, Maytham al-Tammar, was one of the closest companions and greatest lovers of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. In fact, there's a beautiful story where Maytham was once a slave in the markets, and no one knew his name except his mother. Imam Ali approaches him and says, Salaamu alaykum Maytham. Maytham looked at him and he said, how do you know my name? Only my mother knows my real name. Imam Ali says, the Prophet used to tell me stories about how me and you would become friends and you'll be my closest companion. Maytham was entranced by the love of Amir alayhi salam. And he was told that one day he would be killed for his love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And they even showed him the tree which he'll be crucified on before he dies. And when he found this out, he spent his days watering this tree, saying, I was created for you, and you were created for me. And then what happened? When the tyrants oppressed the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, they took Maytham, and they crucified him to this tree. How did he respond? He spent his remaining days calling people to the love of Ali alayhi salam while crucified on this tree, until the day they cut out his tongue. I'm no date seller, but I aspire to be. In the love of Ali, I yearn to be Maytham. I'm tied not to a tree, but tied to its root. And the root of Islam is Abu Talib's son. Mountains may be moved, but my faith cannot be. When one falls for Ali, that choice has long gone. I hear them whisper that my love for him is too much. Don't they know that in his love I seek to drown? That I sip from the rivers of the walaya of Ali, until the day that its blessings drown both my lungs. Maytham watered the tree upon which he would die. I carry the crucifix which I'll be pinned on. Maytham knew no words but the love of Ali. And if I am blessed, then Maytham I'll become. And I shall recite the virtues of Ali until the day they cut out my tongue. And I shall recite the virtues of Ali until the day they cut out my tongue. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى بيت الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل. As we know, as we read all the time in Hadith Qisa, there's a line that says everything, all of creation was created for the sake of these five, the five Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Sometimes I ponder on what this means, what this line means. Does that mean that everything that we see, the trees, the oceans, the mountains, they say there are more stars in the sky than grains of sand on the earth. Can it really be that Allah created everything for these five people? When you think about what these five people represented, patience, love, the standing up against oppression, justice, is it really far-fetched to say that Allah created everything for the sake of these qualities that are embodied by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? And then the question arises, if Allah created everything for the sake of these five, if this whole story of this universe is about 5 people, where do we fall? Where do we fit in this story? The Lord created 5 senses. Allah gifted me 5 senses to make sense of one certainty. That is, we are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. A story that began, before this story had begun, 5 lights were created to reflect Allah's one. The countless stars and galaxies, these lights outshone. Search for any sign of God greater, you'll find none. Any celestial beauty, by theirs would be outdone, because stars come and go, but the Ahlul Bayt live on. There are more stars than grains of sand, and all of this is to portray that we are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. Allah created mankind, but what would mankind even be were He not to send man Muhammad, His mercy? What could mankind be in any other story? What characters, what plots, what story that is worthy? We are all but mere travelers upon this journey. Your and my story, He says. Your lives are told to me. The only choice we have is which character we want to be, because we are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. Allah gifted us sight, and through all my eyes have seen. They have not seen anyone purer than the purest 14. I've not tasted sweetness like the knowledge they'd feed. I've not heard prayer spoken like it's from the unseen. Before I thank Allah for the air that I breathe, I thank Him for the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen. I thank Him for making me see Him through the greatness of Ali, because we are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. I thank Him for choosing me from the millions of men to see patience from the patience of Imam al-Hassan. Patience so strong that it shook the story writer's pen, because we are mere reflections of his struggle within. When Allah sees us patient, He remembers him. When Allah sees us patient, He remembers Him, sending infinite blessings upon Muhammad's children. What is our glory? By the Ahlul Bayt's glory, because we are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. And when I recall Hassan, I recall Hussein, the name that brings me so much joy, and yet with it brings so much pain. When I recall Hassan, I recall Hussein, the name that brings me joy, and yet with it brings pain. This is all their story, but let me explain that of the greatest of its chapters, this story became. When we recall Karbala and we mention its name, we become the adjectives used to describe that day. No one would know Karbala without us, surely, because we are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. Allah wrote this story, and it's about no other than the story of a father and the story of his daughter. The story of Muhammad and Fatima al-Zahra. Because without it, their faith, because without their faith, none of it would matter. The planets and the stars, they are mere beads for her prayer. Tell me of Allah, is there a sign greater? This is the story that you're all a part of. So act accordingly, because we are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. We are all but mere characters in the Ahlul Bayt story. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Third louder salawat, please. Inshallah, today I'll be at your service to recite a few poems about various members of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. We're all here gathered to remember the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. And I want to take your minds back to a few weeks ago when we heard the devastating news from Peshawar, when so many of our brothers and sisters were killed simply for their love of wilayah, simply for the love of Sahib al-Zaman alayhi salam. And unfortunately, it's shocking, but it's not surprising, because this is our root, isn't it? This is the small price we pay for the love of wilayah. And the irony is that they hate us for what? They don't hate us because our love is a lie. They hate us because our love is the only truth there is, isn't it? The only truth there is. The same way that when you see videos of these bombings, it's unnatural to see men running toward the bombings, crying, Ya Hussein, Labik, Ya Hussein. And I tell them that they call me a disbeliever. Ya Sahib al-Zaman, they call me a disbeliever for believing in your love, when belief itself is knowing that loving you is enough. They call me a kafir for believing in your love, when belief itself is knowing that loving you is enough, because indeed that is wilayah. What? The belief that love is stronger. It's true that my eyes can't see you, but my eyes are made of mere flesh. My mind knows that your absence, my mind knows that in your absence, my soul is left in unrest, because my heart just cannot rest unless by yours it is caressed. Such is your love that it is light. All untouched are left in darkness. Tyrants, they envy your absence, because by it we are all oppressed. Whenever the clouds cover the sun, my gaze, it darts between the east and west. They tell me that my love for you can only be a lie, when it's the only truth that only the wretched deny.